Cosme Misa, a devilish charm, an angel's glitter.
What's the best way to describe
Misa's
these?
new line of lipstick.
Juicy.
Champs in the making. I'm doing Death Note today, and even though I'm not a massive anime guy, I go back to this show time and time again. While I think it's a good-ish resource, it's just so damn
juicy
as well. And isn't this why you learn a language? To enjoy art and media from beyond the confines of your mother tongue. So as always, let's get started with what the show is, and then talk about using it as a study resource and why it's a great idea, and why it's also a bad idea. I'm pretty sure that most people that clicked on this have already seen the show, and they already know exactly what it's all about. But I'm still going to keep it mainly spoiler free, because if you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to experience this show for the first time spoiler free. Especially that one scene, oh my god.
I can give you a massage as well. It's the least I can do to atone for my sins.
So Death Note is a crime and fantasy epic that follows two main parties, I guess. The first one is Light, the main character. He's a schoolboy and a child genius who finds the Death Note, a book that can kill people when you write their name inside. And he's usually partnered with Ryuk, who is a Shinigami, a god of death. Ryuk follows him around throughout most of the story. And then party two is L. L is the detective who's tasked with finding out who is responsible for initially these seemingly random deaths, and he's accompanied by a police task force, some of these characters being more important to the story than others. But that's about it, that's the premise. It's a cat and mouse detective thriller, with its USP being that the mouse has got these otherworldly powers, and that's all you need to know for the purpose of this video. So what level of Japanese do you need for this? And the reason this one's a tough one for me is I pretty much know this script word for word, but I don't think that's an accurate representation of my Japanese level. I think it's just because I've watched this show so many times and it's just sunk into me. Generally speaking though, this is on the upper end of content that I can actually enjoy, and I think N3-ish would be the minimum that I would go into this to actually enjoy watching it and understand the story on some meaningful level. But even then, I'd be prepared to pause, rewind, take notes, and use Japanese subtitles to assist with your viewing. And yes, I said Japanese subtitles because English subtitles as a blanket rule will never be good for your learning. Obviously there will be times where it's great for your enjoyment of an anime, and if you are watching it with English subs just because you want to chill out, then great. I'm not speaking from a place of elitism, but the trouble with English subtitles when you're learning is Japanese and English are incredibly different in their grammatical structure and their conjugations, choice of words, whatever. So it's quite often the subtitle you are looking at on the screen doesn't perfectly line up with the words that you can hear at the same time, and what's going to happen is you're going to tune out the Japanese part altogether and just rely on the English subtitles, and at that point you might as well just be watching it to enjoy. So Japanese subs only, and then you can combine what you're reading with what you're hearing, and that's going to increase your chance of understanding the content. Over here in jolly old England, you can watch it on Netflix with closed caption subs, and I'm pretty sure you can in most parts of the world as well. But if you can't watch it on Netflix where you are, it's pretty easy to find on even YouTube these days. And if it doesn't have subs, a great resource is a plugin called Language Reactor that lets you have auto-generated subs playing at the bottom, or you can import sub files as well. And the nice thing about Language Reactor is there's a bunch of productivity tools, such as the ability to pause after every sentence automatically, so you can watch it in a very deliberately intentional way for studying words. You can hear the sentence, stop to break, do I understand this? Yes, no, and then from there you can easily be copying and pasting chunks out into an Anki deck or something, should you care to. But let's take a look at some other reasons now why this is a great resource for studying. And the first thing is, this is an incredibly dialogue heavy show. It's limited on action, and it's very limited on visual exposition. What I mean is you don't even need to really be looking at the screen most of the time to know what's going on. The story, the way it moves forward is all driven by the dialogue. So in a 23-minute episode, you're probably getting about 20 minutes of concentrated Japanese speaking. And the tone of Death Note is usually quite somber and calm. They use sound effects and music quite sparingly, even though the music is fantastic in this show. The dialogue's often slow and deliberate. In parts, it almost feels like a JLPT listening test.
なぜそんなに時計を気になさってるんですか？
ああ、これ？
男の人は何をしますか？
And what that means is, if like me you end up watching this a couple times, you can probably treat rewatches as like a podcast or an audio only thing. It's surprising how with a little bit of understanding of the story up front, this actually translates really well into almost an audiobook. The second thing to talk about is the narrative is very focused, and that leads to a lot of repeated dialogue. So let me just show you a quick example. Take this word, shinzo mahi. This means heart attack. It's a word that you probably don't know unless you're already a fan of this show or you have some vested interest in knowing it, like you're studying medicine. Let's have a look at where that word pops up just in the first 2 episodes.
で心臓麻痺になる。
突然心臓麻痺で死亡しました。受けに受刑者が心臓麻痺で亡くなるという異例の
大犯罪者が心臓麻痺で死んでいくのだ。
全てが心臓麻痺だ。以上が心臓麻痺なんて偶然があるか。わからない心臓麻痺でしょ。言います。
心臓麻痺。
Shish kebab, Shawshank Redemption, Chicago. You're out of there.
The same is true for a lot of words in this show that you might not know as well. I learned words in this show like arrest, suspect, case, incident, crime scene, and many words in philosophy that I may have otherwise not learned, like heaven, hell, justice, evil. And they are words that you're probably not going to use that much, but they are surrounded and grounded in everyday conversation. That means acquiring them comes very naturally compared to like watching an all and out fantasy style series. And the last point of discussion on this side is going to be the manga. So Death Note the anime is a televised adaptation of the manga of the same name. They're not completely one for one, but they're pretty damn close. They're probably 95% the same, at least to the extent of everything in the anime is going to be in the manga. I haven't checked that. That's just the impression I've got from watching and reading this. But a great thing about that is going to be if you want to actively read and revise a specific part of the show, the chances are that that scene exists word for word in the manga. And once you've watched it, it's going to be easier to read, or vice versa. Once you've read it, it's going to be easier to watch. Now, weirdly enough, the first thing on my cons list versus the pros list is the same thing that was at the top of my pros list, the dialogue and how much there is. When I talked about Yotsuba in another video, I mentioned that the visual aids in the manga help you figure out what was going on even if you didn't understand the language enough. And you get virtually none of that here. Usually the setting is just an office or a cafe, and the scene just flips back and forth between 2 people talking. So once you get a bit lost, you get very lost quickly. It's not for me to tell you if that's good or bad. Decide for yourself what you want from watching this. Now, this next point was in my pros list at first. Now it's in my cons list, and I'm still not sure it's in the right place. But before I even make the point, I need to make a tangent to discuss anime tropes, particularly in shonen animes. So in the majority of shonen animes made in the last 20 years, I'm talking Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball Z, Solo Leveling, Sword Art Online, Demon Slayer, Tokyo Ghoul, My Hero Academia. They all basically feature the same protagonist, a high-spirited, hard-working underdog who slowly gets stronger through acts of bravery and sacrifice. They all have a sidekick or a friend that they lean on. Friendship is normally a common theme. There's usually a little comic relief, some goofy animations of people. They're all coming-of-age stories. They all hyper-exaggerate emotion. When somebody cries or laughs or when somebody's angry, it's incredibly obvious. And they all have training or tournament or battle arcs, but that's neither here nor there for this point. Why am I even talking about this though? Well, Death Note has got virtually none of this. The main character is emotionally complex and morally grey. Ask who you want. Is Light the good guy? Is he the protagonist, or is he the antagonist? And you may get different views, different opinions on that. I don't want to spoil it, but it's not as straightforward as a lot of these other tropes. And to form an opinion, it requires a deeper understanding of what's going on in the show. Additionally, all the other tropes are largely not present in this. The main characters tend to work alone in solitude. There's a lot of people just talking with their internal monologue. There's very little in the way of fights, battles, romance, comedy, and most of it is not even central to the plot when it is. The emotions that are on display in this show are often subtle and nuanced, and you can't rely on hyper-exaggerated scenes and visual aids to know what's going on. Now, this is good in some ways because it feels more grounded and closer to the real world, or as close to a story about gods of death can be. Again, whether this is good, I will leave for you to decide. So there we go, slightly shorter one this time. Do I recommend this? Well, if it was a channel for critically reviewing anime, this would be a solid 10. This is one of the best shows in any genre that I've ever watched. This is as good as it gets from a point of character building, music, story, but this is for reviewing Death Note as a study resource. So the real answer is, sure, if you're prepared to put in a bunch of effort, be prepared to get a lot out of it. But this is not a walk in the park, not unless you're awesome. And I'm not awesome. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciated the feedback in the previous videos. I'm taking it on board. I am working to make these better. Keep coming, and I will see you in the next one.